Welcome everybody. This is B and B. I am Bryan
I'm Brad.
and we have a review for Dune Part 2. So stay right there. We'll be right back.
This prophecy is how they enslave us! You are not prepared for what is to come.
All right, guys, and we are back and we have our review for Dune Part 2. So just to kind of give a little bit of a recap from Dune Part 1, House Atreides has been, what would you say, Brad? They have been
Eradicated.
eradicated by the Harkonnens, who basically set up a plan with the Emperor. Paul Atreides is out on the run. He takes up an allegiance with the Fremen. Sorry about that. It's the Fremen, and yeah, now they are headed north. And the movie Dune Part 2 pretty much picks up right exactly almost the minute from when Dune Part 1 ends.
Yeah, bodies are piled up and set ablaze by the Harkonnens.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that. There was so much conversation coming out of the first Dune movie, like, oh, it's only like half a story. It feels like it's not complete. And I wasn't necessarily really on that wavelength, but I can appreciate it, I suppose. But here we go, off and running. Like I almost found the way that this movie just starts a little bit more jarring than the way that the first one ended.
No, the same way too, because like I said, they're out on the run and the Harkonnens are right on their tail. And you're right, like when the movie opens up, I mean, it opens up with a jolt and it puts you right into the middle of the action and doesn't let you go. And I find that to be fascinating. I really enjoyed that. Kind of going back to Dune Part 1, I agree with with what you're saying because for me, like, and we've had conversations about this before. It's like I wasn't the biggest fan of Dune Part 1, but the more and more I watch that movie, I do like it and appreciate it a lot more. And I did rewatch the movie actually because I went to the fan event this past Sunday, and I actually watched the first movie Sunday during the day right before I went to go see Part 2. So I literally almost saw them like a double feature. And there's still things about that first movie, more so characters. I just can't find myself really connecting to those characters in a satisfying way for myself. But going into this movie, I love how we actually expand on the world. And that's one thing I love about this is the world building. That's one thing I loved about the first movie was the world building and how they continue that world building into the second movie.
I mean, to me, half the pleasure of the Dune films is watching all the departments rising to such an extraordinary level. Like, I
Yeah.
think you can love this film for its narrative. I think you can love this film for its cinematography, its production design, its costuming. I mean, each one of these things kind of, excels. And
Yeah.
therefore, like, if one element doesn't necessarily land for you, the other elements will rise you up. Like for me, with the first film and with this new film, I had a smile on my face from frame one because they just don't make movies like this right now. This is epic science fiction storytelling. Like
Yeah.
I haven't felt this way about a movie since Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's so earnest and it's so thoughtful and well considered, and so much money has been thrown into it, and
Yeah.
it delivers.
And that's something I think we all have been craving. And that's one thing that I think that I connected with was the filmmaking of this movie. I mean, Denis Villeneuve and Greg Fraser as the DP. I mean, it to me, it was astounding watching this in the theater. And there were a few sequences, and this doesn't really spoil anything. There were a few sequences that when I saw it, and I saw it in IMAX. I don't know if you saw it in IMAX or not, but there's a few
I mean, I
sequences.
saw it in Limax, like the IMAX in the mall. It's like,
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
really
nah.
IMAX.
Yeah, I think that's probably the same way I saw it too, if I'm honest. But the sequence when Paul Atreides first rides the sandworm, I thought was breathtaking in the way that was staged and the way that was shot. I mean, it immerses you right into, like, it almost feels like you're riding the sandworm with him. I mean, there's a shot from behind Paul Atreides, or when he's riding the sandworm, and you see the dust and the wind flying towards the camera, and it feels so immersive. It's such a visceral experience
It's
when you see
chaotic,
it.
right? Like you the reason you feel like you're on the back of that thing is because, it's like, what can you see? What can you hold on to? What actually is happening? And eventually the camera pulls back a little bit, but like that first, securing of Paul atop
Mhm.
the sandworm. I mean, it's total madness. It's anxiety inducing,
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah, yeah. And then another sequence, and I wouldn't even say it's a sequence. It's just, again, it just goes to the filmmaking, and credit to Villeneuve and probably Greg Fraser, was really the introduction of Austin Butler as in that black and white sequence. I
Yeah, with
thought
the
it
sun, yeah.
was beautifully done.
Yeah, I
Absolutely
mean,
beautifully
and
done.
like, who doesn't love Austin Butler right now? When I was walking out of this screening, there was a woman right behind me, and she's like, "That guy is a 15 out of 10." Like, shave his head, remove his eyebrows, he's still a 15 out of 10, I believe was the actual sentence. And
Wow.
it's undeniable. Like, that guy has so much charisma, and he's terrifying in this movie, but it's an attractive terror.
He is extremely terrifying, and that was the thing that kinda took me off guard, because I didn't know what to expect from that performance from him, and then when you see him come on screen, I mean, he you talk about, like, the introduction of a villain. I mean, you're right, he's extremely terrifying when he first comes on screen, and I thought that that was just masterfully done, the
And
way
like
that they
even
really
before he
executed that.
enters the arena and he's, getting, prepped for battle, and the way that he is treating the people who are preparing him, and the way that he devalues everyone around him, and it's extremely upsetting. Like the Dune films, yeah, and the David Lynch movie as well. Like the Dune
Yeah.
story, there's a lot going on there that challenges the viewer, and makes you think like, well, am I having a good time watching these sequences? It can be incredibly uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but I like to sit in that discomfort.
Yeah, you do like that though, which
I
I appreciate. I appreciate. We talk about that with some of Scorsese's movies, but yeah, but there is something that's interesting about seeing, like, living in that, and
Yeah, I mean,
being a little bit in that uncomfortability.
I like a movie that makes me feel something, and this
Yeah.
movie in the first film made me feel a lot of different things. And again, like it's a movie.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I want to talk a little bit about some of the narrative, and a little bit of some of the story that I found fascinating. The idea of the Fremen, and the idea of the prophecy and the Messiah. And hopefully this is not getting into too many spoilers, but I like the story element, as far as, like, the idea that it's speaking to this idea of, you know, fanaticism, when it comes to, like, religious figures, and Paul kind of, like, brushing up against that, and also trying to push against that, and there's a shift with Lady Jessica's character. And there's a little bit of a friction, that I found between Paul and his mother, because she starts to see something with the Fremen that she tries to, I don't want to say manipulate, but try to really pull something more out of
I
that.
think you can definitely say manipulate.
Okay. Okay.
I
Okay.
I struggle a little bit with the way that the religious prophecy is handled
Okay.
in just Dune 1 and 2. Like it's interesting, when I came out of Dune Part 1, I was fully satisfied. I basically knew where Denis Villeneuve was going to take Paul's story after Dune Part 1. But I
Okay.
felt like that ending of Dune Part 1 with him going into the desert, like that felt like an ending to me, him joining up with the Fremen.
Okay.
And this one, again, without spoiling anything, I felt, I think a lot of the way that people felt coming out of Dune Part 1. Like now I feel like there isn't an ending after the climax of this movie. Now I feel like, ooh,
Mm.
I really need Dune Messiah for me to really understand how I feel about this particular narrative, because that whole religious prophecy thing is, you know, it's something that was created by by the Bene Gesserit, you know,
Yeah,
these witches, to control a populace, right? And so here is a religious prophecy that is
yeah,
a fiction, but also Paul may actually be a chosen one figure, or are these visions just, you know, spice induced? Has he just been sucking up too much spice these last several months, and that's what the visions are? You know, like, to me, I feel a little uncomfortable with Paul is a chosen one figure, even
yeah.
if the chosen one idea was a fiction, but then it does lead to so much catastrophe and atrocity by the end of this film. It should be a really depressing ending in a lot of ways. How does the movie want us to feel about Paul? And that's where my question comes in. Like that's where I'm trying to suss out. Like, how does the movie want me to feel about Paul? And I have a certain feeling about Paul based on what I know outside of the film, and I'm not necessarily sure that my idea of what Paul should be, how Paul should be looked upon, is
Mm.
exactly the way that Denis Villeneuve does. But is that the movie's fault? You know, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I
But it's a
mean,
challenging film. Like
no, it is.
ultimately, when I get done with this movie, um, like it's more than this house killed my house and I want revenge and I got my revenge. It's more than that. And the more than that, I think, is very relatable to
Yeah.
human society and human history. And
Um, yeah.
depending on how I ultimately interpret Denis Villeneuve's interpretation, I'm satisfied or I'm not. And that's where I am right now, is I don't know if I'm necessarily satisfied on the character and narrative stuff, but everything around it is so damn good that
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. Like, you got to recommend this movie.
It felt tragic to me, you know, even though it's just tragic in the way that and I don't know Messiah or the next book, but where the movie could possibly go, it left me. But that's the interesting thing about the movie, though. Even though it leaves you with sadness, when you leave the theater, I still felt satisfied watching it.
Well, yeah. So, like, that's my question, right? Like, to me, to me, it doesn't feel tragic enough.
Oh,
Right?
really?
Like, to me, there's a little too much heroism injected into the climax of this interpretation that
Mm,
rubbed me the wrong way.
mm.
But that's only having watched it once. But I need maybe more time and another watch to simmer on it. But that's how I left the film. Is like, I don't think this is I don't think this is tragic enough.
Interesting. I like that interpretation of it as well. It's interesting. I mean, we're recording this on a Wednesday night, and I have tickets to go see it again tomorrow. And I'm always look at movies differently the second time around. So I'm curious to see how what my experience is going to be coming out of the second watch of the movie as well. Now, seeing the movie and knowing like all the different beats that are coming, and seeing some of the things. So I'm curious to see how my second watch is going to be when I see it again.
Yeah, I'm excited to rewatch it as well. I want to take my wife Lisa to see it. You know, she wasn't a huge fan of the first Dune, and she's not
Mm,
necessarily eager to see the second one, but I'm going to force her just so I can have a conversation about her with the ending. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about the ending of the movie when
yeah,
we're
yeah,
outside of this little Zoom room.
yeah.
But like, let's
Uh,
talk a little bit about, you know, some of the other characters, some of the other performances. You
yeah,
know, Stellan Skarsgård's back in this one
Baron.
is Baron Harkonnen, still gross and terrifying.
Yeah. Now, I think we're getting into another part that I really didn't jive with that much, was the Harkonnens. They feel very one-dimensional in this movie for me personally. Um, I mean, they feel more like just, and maybe that's the point.
Well, yeah, like
I,
like what
I
dimension
was,
do you want out of
yeah,
them?
I was
They
thinking
are
about,
like evil.
yeah, I was thinking about that today because I'm just like, because you look at how much of a threat that they were to the Atreides in the first movie because they were the ones that kind of basically ambushed them to take out Paul Atreides, Leto, his father. But in this movie, and it was just more so the characterization, and my biggest issue was with Dave Bautista. I didn't really like the way he portrayed that character in this movie. I don't know. It kind of took me out of it, to be honest with you, a little bit.
Oh, I mean, he is used to uplift Austin Butler, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's kind of what happens with Dave Bautista in this film. And I can never remember these characters' names, and people are going to be so mad they can't hear me.
Rabin. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I like to me, Bautista's character, though, in his function, gives a little bit more dimension to the Harkonnens.
I don't think there needs to be a lot of characterization with them, especially in this movie, because we're so focused on the Fremen and Paul and the story about the religious aspect of him being the prophecy and things like that, where it doesn't feel like, we need to get much more in depth with the Harkonnens.
And Zendaya, the relationship between her and Timothy Chalamet.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, man. To me, when I saw that movie, she had the performance of she had the performance in that movie for me. I thought Zendaya's character from the beginning all the way up to the end, where that character is left off, I thought was really satisfying for me just as a moviegoer, like just watching the movie and watching her arc and her journey. I don't know. She gave a really powerful performance, and to me, she was the standout performance. I really like Zendaya in this
Yeah,
movie.
I mean, she's the emotional core of the movie. I think both of them together are electric. I think Timothy Chalamet is absolutely fantastic in this movie.
Yeah,
I know you have some issues maybe with his turn at the end or a decision he makes at the end, but
yeah,
for me, he carries this film on his
yeah,
back, and
yeah.
it's he's got a hefty back.
No, I mean, outside of just like, and that's more on the story and the narrative aspect of it, but his performance, yeah, you're right. He carries this movie from beginning to end. And again, I like his journey from where he starts to where he ends up. It's just maybe, some of the paths we take to get there, I was just like, I don't know if it really kind of worked with me all the way through, but I like seeing that arc and that journey and where that goes into the next film.
It's interesting, though, thinking about this film after some of the comments that Denis Villeneuve has made that have gone a little bit viral this past week
Yeah,
about cinema having to embrace cinema, the visual, and how he's never loved a movie because of dialogue. And I think that's an extreme position. I can understand why some people balk
yeah,
against it, but honestly, like for me, you watch this movie and you get it because this film is a visual feast. It is a visual experience, and it's the
yeah.
type of movie when I get done, I'm dreaming on Arrakis. Like it stays with me because of the
Does.
visual language of this film, and because it's so immersive. I that's how I connect with the film. I connect to it through the world building, through the visuals, and I just think it's a massive achievement.
No, I agree. Like I said, I mean, I can't deny the filmmaking of it. I mean, I think it's an achievement on all levels. Like you said earlier in the review, I think in all departments, it's a massive achievement. And I was just in awe of what I was watching on screen. And you're right, movies just don't get made with this type of detail and care in this way. And I'm excited to see what Villeneuve does next. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
with the third movie, with whatever he does next, I'm excited to see what he does next.
And even with my confusion about how I feel about the final moments of this film,
Yeah.
that's kind of exciting too, because again, how many movies leave you really pondering your own feelings about it? You know, like I
Yeah.
didn't come out of this and go like, "Oh my God, that was a masterpiece, perfect, flawless, no problem. Oh my God, that's total dog dump of a movie." No, it's like I got to think about this thing. I got to chew on it for a while.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting kind of doing this review early after seeing it because it is a movie that I do kind of want to sit with for a while, and maybe even some of the thoughts that we've talked about tonight, I'll probably have a different opinion on it,
Yeah.
when we talk about it later.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, and,
um,
like, compare this movie to some of the other films that we have recently reviewed on the B&B show.
yeah.
Like, this past, couple of months in 2024 have been rough.
Dude, I'm telling you, man. I mean, this was a breath of fresh air. I mean, the first 2 months have been rough. There's been some movies I liked, but like I said, to get something like this that, like you say, you can ponder on, you can chew on, like this is the substance that I want, like the conversations that I want to have about film that I haven't been able to have in the last couple of months.
Yeah,
So
best film of 2024 for me so far.
easily, easily, yeah. So yeah, I guess we can give a rating, B plus.
Yeah, B plus. That's what we do here. We give it a B plus if we love it, a B minus if we don't. So that's two enthusiastic B pluses from Brad and Brian.
Yeah, so that is a B plus for Dune Part 2. Thanks for watching our review, and be sure to check out our main show at Prince George's Community Television. We'll probably be talking about this movie again along with some other movies. And keep a lookout on the channel for some more reviews of some more movies coming out in the near future. So
Adam Webb.
Madam Web, yeah, we already reviewed that. We're not talking about that one anymore. Thanks for watching, guys.